Okay, Professor Jim Schultz here from my Finance 680 class. Due to popular demand, based on some emails and things like that I have received, I thought I would go ahead and very swiftly shoot this video for number 4 from the previous first exam. I've gotten several questions about this, and so I figured, hey, let me go ahead and knock this guy out a couple days before we have our review. And of course, again, I'd be happy to answer any questions about this in class as well. But I figured this might be helpful with the exam now being a couple days away. Okay, so you have this problem, and the way it sets up, it has to do with a dividend-paying stock. And although we haven't directly covered dividend-paying stocks yet, we'll do that in Chapter 8. Based on what you know at this point in the class, you should still be able to handle a problem like this, because you're getting $1.25 for 8 years, and then you're getting $2.25 for the 5 years after that. So basically what you have on your hands are two annuities that are stacked on top of each other, right? That's really all this boils down to. And so what you need to do is figure out what is the overall present value of both of those annuities. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the present value of each of the annuities individually and then add them together. So for the first one, you got this $1.25 for 8 years, right? The interest rate is 9% given in the problem. It's going to be 8 years. Future value is 0. It's just pure annuity. So you crank out that present value in $6.92. So that's pretty easy, right? The real crux of the problem, and where I would think that it might give someone difficulty, would be in this area of the setup. The second annuity is going to be $2.25 for 5 years. All right. Now technically this is years 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. But I just put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can set it up however you want to, but it makes the most sense to me to just treat this as a standalone annuity first. So what I do is I find the present value of this guy, right? I know the writing is kind of light and it's kind of squeezed in there, but your future value is 0, your interest rate is 9, your payment is $2.25, and your N is 5. So when you find the present value of that, it comes out to be $8.75. However, much like is the case with the previous bond, the bond problem I made a video on from the previous second exam, I think it was number 10, right? You have to remember that this $8.75 is a present value, but it's the present value when this annuity begins, which would be right here, right? We need it back here. As it stands right now, this $8.75 belongs right here, right? So what we need to do is we need to discount this thing back to the present value at time equals 0. Because here, it's not time equals 0. This is time equal 8, right? As you can see, I drew the timelines stacked on top of each other so that you can see when one ends and the next begins. And so my future value is $8.75. My I is 9. There's no payment. You've already accounted for the $2.25. It's baked into this number, this $8.75. And then the N is 8, because now with the number sitting at this point on the timeline, you've got to bring it back 8 periods. And so that gives you 439. So then what you want to do is you need to add up this guy and this guy to get the 1131. The critical part of this problem is understanding that when you find this 875 number, it belongs right here on the timeline. And if that's still not clear to you, much like I said when I did that bond problem, right now take out a pen and paper and in front of you put down a 3-year annuity of $100 each year. And literally draw the timeline 0, 1, 2, 3, right? If I forget about this problem for a minute, look down on your sheet that's in front of you that you just drew that timeline on. If I were to ask you, find the present value of that annuity, and where does that present value belong on the timeline? What would you do? You would find the present value of the annuity, and where would you put it on the timeline? You would put it at time equals 0, right? In other words, it belongs at the period before the first payment begins. So this 875 belongs here, or the period before the first $2.25 payment is collected. And so obviously that's not today, that's 8 years from now. So we've got to bring that guy back here. So hopefully this was helpful for you guys in solving this problem.